The red bow was bigger than the car. That's what I remember first. It sat perfectly centered on the hood of a brand new black BMW parked in my parents' driveway, Christmas lights reflecting across the polished surface like something from a commercial. Everyone was outside filming, phones raised, laughter everywhere. My sister Ashley screamed when she saw it. "Oh my God, Dad, Mom, are you serious?" My mother clapped excitedly. My father held the keys high like he was presenting an award. "Only the best for our golden girl," he announced. Everyone cheered. Neighbors watched from across the street. My aunt recorded vertically for Facebook. Ashley ran into my parents' arms, crying happy tears. And then my mother turned to me. "Oh, and we didn't forget you." She handed me a small wrapped box. Tiny, light, the size of something you'd buy at a dollar store checkout line. I smiled politely and opened it while cameras were still rolling. Inside was a plastic pink piggy bank. $2 bills folded neatly inside. My cousin laughed first. Someone thought it was a joke. I looked up. My parents were smiling, not joking. My father said casually, "You've always been good at saving." Laughter spread again. The cameras stayed on me, waiting for a reaction. I closed the piggy bank slowly and nodded. "Thank you," because in that moment, I understood something important. This wasn't thoughtlessness. This was intentional. And by 2 a.m. that same night, I would be gone. Before I continue, I'm curious where you're watching from tonight. And what time is it? And if quiet stories about real moments resonate with you, you're welcome to stay with me, like and subscribe to my channel. It's a little token of love that keeps us creating more stories. Now let me explain how Christmas became the night everything finally broke. I'm 32, oldest daughter, responsible one, independent one, invisible one. My sister Ashley is 3 years younger, charismatic, social, effortlessly adored. Growing up, we weren't openly compared. It was subtler than that. Ashley was celebrated. I was expected. When she got average grades, she was trying her best. When I got perfect grades, my father asked why I wasn't competing nationally. When she changed majors twice, my mother said she was finding herself. When I chose a stable career in accounting, they said I lacked ambition. Nothing was ever openly cruel, just uneven, consistently uneven. The favoritism became undeniable when Ashley graduated college. My parents paid off her student loans immediately. I congratulated her sincerely. Later that night, I asked my father quietly if they planned something similar for me. He laughed. "You're good with money, you don't need help." At the time, I accepted that logic. It sounded reasonable, but patterns don't reveal themselves in single moments. They reveal themselves over years. Ashley received a rent-free apartment funded by my parents, a job through my father's friend, monthly support gifts. I received advice. "Work harder. Be patient. You're strong." Strength became the excuse for neglect. Here's the strange part. Despite everything, my parents insisted they treated us equally. Publicly, they praised fairness. Privately, resources flowed in one direction. And every time I noticed it, I was told I was imagining things, so I stopped mentioning it. I learned silence keeps peace longer than truth. Until Christmas. I lived alone in a small apartment 30 minutes away. Stable job, no debt, no financial assistance from my parents for years. I visited regularly, helped with taxes, repaired their tech problems, organized family events. Reliable daughter energy. Ashley, meanwhile, moved back home temporarily to reset. That temporary stay lasted 2 years. My parents loved having her there. The house revolved around her presence. I didn't resent her. That's important. Ashley wasn't cruel. She simply accepted what was given. The system existed long before she noticed it. My mother called weeks before Christmas. "You have to come early this year," she said excitedly. "We have something special planned." Her tone felt rehearsed, almost performative. I assumed family photos or a surprise trip announcement. I bought thoughtful gifts for everyone, wrapped carefully, arrived early like always. Ashley was unusually excited. My father kept checking the driveway. My mother adjusted decorations repeatedly. Something was being staged. I just didn't know I was part of it. After dinner, my father announced, "Everyone outside." Phones appeared instantly. My cousin whispered, "This must be big." The garage door opened slowly, and there it was, the BMW, brand new. Shining, perfect. Ashley screamed and ran forward. My parents filmed every second. My father said loudly, "You deserve it after everything you've been through." Everything she'd been through. She had quit 2 jobs that year, but no one questioned it. The moment wasn't about reality. It was about narrative. Then came my gift. The piggy bank, $2 on camera. My aunt laughed awkwardly. "Is this a prank?" My mother smiled sweetly. "No, it's symbolic." Symbolic. That word lingered longer than the humiliation. My father added, "She doesn't need handouts. She's independent." Everyone nodded approvingly. They framed neglect as respect, and suddenly I understood something clearly. They weren't rewarding Ashley. They were making a statement about me. Ashley hugged me excitedly. "Isn't it amazing?" "It is," I said honestly. My father turned toward relatives. "She chose a practical life. We encourage financial discipline." Someone joked, "Start saving, maybe you'll get a car someday too." Laughter again. I smiled politely, but inside a quiet realization formed. This wasn't about gifts, it was control. Ashley stayed dependent, received generosity. I stayed independent, received symbolism. Reward and punishment disguised as parenting. Later that evening, while everyone admired the BMW, I walked past the dining table and noticed something strange. A folder, car dealership documents. Open. Ashley wasn't paying attention. I glanced down accidentally and saw a name printed clearly under registered owner. Not Ashley, not my parents. My name. I froze. At first, I assumed coincidence, maybe paperwork error. I closed the folder carefully and said nothing, but curiosity had started. Why would my name be there? And why give Ashley the car publicly if legally it wasn't hers? I didn't confront anyone. I observed. Because suddenly, Christmas felt less like a celebration and more like a setup. By midnight, guests left. Ashley continued posting videos online. "Best Christmas ever." My parents looked satisfied, victorious even. I helped clean dishes quietly. My mother said casually, "You handled your gift maturely." I nodded. "What did it symbolize?" I asked gently. She smiled. "That you should learn from your sister. Sometimes receiving is more important than proving independence." I understood then. They weren't joking. They genuinely believed they had taught me a lesson. Around 1:30 a.m., the house fell quiet. Everyone asleep. I walked back into the kitchen. The folder still sat on the counter. I opened it again. Slowly, carefully, registration, insurance, purchase agreement. Every document listed me as the legal owner. My heart didn't race. I didn't panic. I just understood. The BMW wasn't Ashley's gift. It was mine, given publicly to someone else. Why? Control, leverage, image. If I protested earlier, I'd look jealous. If I stayed silent, they controlled both daughters. That realization changed everything. I picked up the keys resting beside the folder, walked outside. Cold December air, silent street. The red bow still tied perfectly across the hood. I removed it carefully and placed it on the porch. Then I got into the driver's seat, adjusted the mirror, started the engine, and at exactly 2 a.m. I drove away. 30 minutes later, my phone began ringing. "Dad, Mom, Ashley," over and over. I didn't answer. Then a voicemail arrived. My father's voice, angry, sharp, unfamiliar. "Return the car immediately or we're reporting it stolen." I listened calmly, then replayed the registration document in my mind. Because the one thing they didn't realize yet was that legally, they had just threatened to report my own car stolen. And that was the moment I stopped being the quiet daughter. I didn't turn the music on while driving. I wanted silence. The kind that lets thoughts settle instead of react. Streetlights passed rhythmically across the windshield as I drove toward my apartment, the red bow still sitting in the passenger seat like evidence from a strange crime scene. My phone kept vibrating. "Dad, Mom, Ashley, Dad again." I let every call ring out. Then another voicemail arrived. This one wasn't angry, it was controlled, which somehow felt worse. "You're being dramatic," my father's voice said. "Bring the car back tonight. Don't create unnecessary problems." Unnecessary problems. I almost smiled. Because for years, that phrase had meant one thing in my family: don't expose us. When I reached my apartment parking garage, I didn't go upstairs immediately. Instead, I sat inside the BMW with the engine off. I opened the glove compartment. Insurance documents, registration, temporary purchase contract, all under my name. Even financing approval listed my credit history. That's when the first uncomfortable question appeared. Why would they use my identity without telling me? This wasn't favoritism anymore. This was strategy. And suddenly, Christmas felt less like humiliation and more like a transaction I had unknowingly been part of. My phone rang again. Ashley. I answered this time. Her voice came fast. Why would you do that? I stayed calm. Do what? You stole my car. I looked at the steering wheel quietly. It isn't yours. Silence, then defensive laughter. Dad bought it for me. Whose name is on the registration? Another pause. Longer this time. I don't know, she said. That stuff doesn't matter. It mattered, and deep down she knew it. Mom joined the call on speaker. Her tone instantly softened, the emotional manipulation voice. Honey, we understand you felt embarrassed tonight. Embarrassed. They reframed humiliation as sensitivity. You shouldn't have reacted impulsively, she continued. I asked calmly, why is the car registered under my name? Neither of them answered immediately. Background whispering, muffled conversation. Then my father took the phone. His voice was sharp again. That's irrelevant. It wasn't. I waited. Silent stretches make people reveal more than arguments ever do. Finally, he said, it was easier for financing. There it was, the first truth. I laughed softly, not mockingly, just surprised. So you used my credit? He sighed heavily like I was exhausting. You weren't using it anyway. The sentence landed cold. My mother added quickly, you should feel honored we trusted you. Trusted, without consent, without discussion. Then came the line that clarified everything. My father said, Ashley needed a fresh start. Banks were complicated, you're stable. It made sense. I closed my eyes briefly. So that was it. Ashley received the gift. I received the liability, public humiliation, private responsibility, perfect system. And suddenly years of memories rearranged themselves. The time my father asked for my tax documents for comparison. The credit inquiry notification I ignored months earlier. The vague questions about my salary. They hadn't just favored Ashley. They had used me. Quiet daughter. Reliable daughter. Financially responsible daughter. I wasn't overlooked. I was infrastructure. My mother's tone shifted, slightly impatient. Now please bring the car back before neighbors notice it's gone. Neighbors. Image again, not concern. Not apology, reputation. I asked gently, did you plan to tell me? Silence. Then my father said bluntly, you wouldn't have agreed. Honesty finally appeared. I nodded even though he couldn't see me. You're right. His voice hardened immediately. If you don't return it tonight, we'll report it stolen. There it was again. Control through fear. I answered calmly. You can try. The silence on the other end changed. For the first time, uncertainty. My father spoke slower now. What does that mean? I looked down at the registration paper resting on my lap. It means you should check whose car you're reporting. He hung up. No goodbye. 5 minutes later, Ashley texted. Dad says you're overreacting. You always do this. You ruin happy moments. I stared at the message, not angry, just tired. Because suddenly I understood why the piggy bank mattered. It wasn't random cruelty. It was psychological positioning. Public message, Ashley equals worthy investment. Me equals independent outsider. So when the car's financial burden surfaced later, everyone would already believe it belonged to Ashley emotionally. And I would look petty for questioning it. It was careful, intentional, layered. At 3:07 a.m., an email notification arrived. Subject line, auto loan confirmation. I opened it slowly. Monthly payment amount appeared on the screen. Large, very large. Auto withdrawal authorization already scheduled. From my bank account. I felt something inside me go completely still. They hadn't just used my name. They had linked my finances, without asking, without informing me, without permission. Christmas suddenly made perfect sense. The piggy bank wasn't humiliation alone. It was irony. They gave me $2 while assigning me an $80,000 debt. That was the exact moment confusion ended. This wasn't favoritism, this was exploitation, and something changed inside me. I stopped feeling hurt. I started thinking strategically. Because for the first time I understood, they believed I would quietly accept it, like always. Reliable daughter fixes problems. Reliable daughter absorbs consequences. Reliable daughter doesn't make scenes. They still thought they were in control. And that misunderstanding was about to become very expensive. I didn't call back. I didn't argue. I opened my laptop, downloaded every document, loan agreements, insurance contracts, email confirmations, credit authorization timestamps. I noticed something critical. The digital authorization signature wasn't mine. They had checked a consent box electronically, but the IP address traced back to my parents' home network. I leaned back slowly. Legal territory now, real consequences. I wasn't angry anymore. I was calm, focused, methodical. At 4:12 a.m., my phone rang again. Dad, I answered. His tone had changed completely. Cold, controlled. You need to understand something, he said. Families help each other. I listened. You benefited from this family your entire life. That sentence almost made me laugh, because I had just spent hours realizing the opposite. Then he added, don't embarrass us over paperwork. Paperwork, my identity, my credit, my financial future, reduced to paperwork. I replied quietly, I'm not embarrassing anyone. Pause, then I said, I'm protecting myself. He didn't respond immediately, and for the first time in my life, I heard uncertainty in my father's silence. Because at that moment, the quiet daughter stopped reacting emotionally and started preparing justice. I blocked my father at 2:37 a.m., not in anger, in sequence. Dad first, Mom second, Ashley last. Not because it was emotional, because it was organized. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't responding to them, I was documenting them. The silence that followed felt different than previous fights. No more ringing phones, no more notifications, just stillness. But stillness in situations like this never means peace. It means recalibration. By 8:13 a.m., I already had 30 missed calls from unknown numbers, 10 emails, 1 letter notification from the bank app, and 1 message from Ashley sent through a different account. You're seriously going to ruin Christmas over this? I stared at it for a few seconds, then closed it, because I had stopped participating in their version of reality. And that was the first real shift. I went to my laptop and started mapping everything. Loan account, insurance linkage, registration trail, email authorization logs. Something stood out immediately. The BMW wasn't just registered under my name. It had been assigned to me 6 weeks before Christmas, before the bow, before the surprise. Before Ashley's reaction, I paused. That changed everything. Because that meant the car wasn't a gift. It was already placed in my financial responsibility long before anyone smiled in that driveway. And I was the only one who didn't know. My mother called again from a new number. I answered this time. Her voice was softer now, carefully rehearsed. Where the hell are you? I stayed silent. Then she took a pause, a bit softer tone. We need to talk calmly, she said. I didn't respond. She continued. You're misunderstanding what happened. I asked quietly, am I? Yes, she said quickly. It was just temporary paperwork arrangement. Temporary, that word again, used whenever permanence was inconvenient. I leaned back in my chair. Why didn't you tell me? A pause, then she said, because you would have made it complicated. There it was, the truth underneath everything. My consent wasn't missing accidentally, it was removed intentionally. Her tone changed. You've always been so independent, she said. We relied on that, my dear. I stayed silent. She continued. Ashley was overwhelmed. We were just trying to support her. She is your sister, after all, support, at my expense. Then came the familiar line. You're the strong one. You can handle it. That sentence used to sound like praise. Now it sounded like extraction. I opened the bank authorization file again. Something small caught my attention. The contact email listed for loan verification wasn't mine. It was my father's, which meant they didn't just use my identity. They actively managed my financial communications. I leaned forward slowly, because now this wasn't just family manipulation. This was structured financial control. A new message arrived. Ashley this time again, but different tone. Less confident, more uncertain. Dad says if you don't fix this, they might come after you legally. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, because it was predictable. They were trying the same tool again. Fear. Except now it had no effect. I typed one reply, then let them review the documents, and I stopped responding again. At 11:02 a.m., my father called from another number. I answered. No greeting, just him immediately. You are making a very big mistake. I replied calmly. I didn't authorize any of this. He snapped. You benefited from the arrangement. That word again, arrangement. Not theft, not deception, arrangement. Like I was a passive participant in my own exploitation. I asked quietly. Did I agree to it? Silence. Then he said, You're blowing this out of proportion. That sentence, always that sentence, used when accountability starts appearing. I said something I had never said before. I want written confirmation of every financial agreement under my name. The line went quiet instantly. Then my mother grabbed the phone in the background. Her voice sharpened. Why are you being difficult? Difficult. Another label. Another control word. I responded. I'm being accurate. Silence again. And this time they didn't have a quick reply. After the call ended, I didn't feel emotional. I felt structured. Because now I understood the system. They weren't improvising. They were relying on my silence. My compliance wasn't assumed. It was engineered, so I stopped being predictable. I sent one email. Subject line. Request for full financial disclosure, immediate, no emotion. No explanation, just documentation. Then I waited. 3 hours later, my aunt called. Not my parents. That was interesting. Her voice was cautious. You know they're stressed, she said. I replied calmly. So am I, she hesitated. They said you're trying to take the car. I corrected her softly. The car is legally registered to me. Silence. Then she said something unexpected. Is it? That was the first crack in their narrative. Not from my parents. From the audience they built. By evening, something shifted. Ashley posted nothing. My mother stopped posting Christmas photos. My father's number stopped calling repeatedly. Instead, silence became strategic on their side too, and I recognized it immediately. They were regrouping, not apologizing, not accepting, rebuilding control. At 9:44 p.m., a single email arrived from a legal assistant in my father's company. Subject, request for clarification inside. One line stood out. Please confirm if you intend to pursue independent ownership of the vehicle and associated financial obligations. I stared at it for a long time, because that sentence confirmed everything. They no longer saw me as a daughter in conflict. They saw me as a variable they had lost control over, and that meant the power shift had already started. Quietly, irreversibly. I closed the laptop slowly. No satisfaction, no anger, just clarity, because the real question now wasn't what they did. It was what I was going to do next, with all the evidence they never expected me to understand. My phone lit up again at 6:41 a.m. Unknown number, then another, then a voicemail. I didn't listen immediately. I already knew the tone. But when I finally pressed play, my father's voice came through, tight, irritated, almost offended. This has gone far enough. You are acting like an outsider, not a daughter. I placed the phone down on the table. Let it finish. Then another message arrived immediately after. Bring the car back today. Stop creating chaos over something you don't even understand. I exhaled slowly, because that word again, chaos. In their version of reality, accountability always looked like disruption. I answered the next call. My father didn't greet me, just immediately. Where is the car? I stayed calm. In my possession. His tone sharpened instantly. Don't play games. I replied softly, I'm not. A pause, then he said, You're embarrassing this family over a misunderstanding. I blinked slowly. Misunderstanding? My mother's voice entered the call in the background. She's overreacting again. Then directly into the phone, Sweetheart, just return it. Don't make this ugly. Ugly, that word again. Used whenever truth disrupted comfort. My father took the phone back. You've always had difficulty understanding practical decisions, he said. I didn't respond. He continued. Your sister needed that car, you don't need it. I asked quietly. Then why is it under my name? Silence, then irritation. Because you were convenient. That was the first honest sentence they said all week. Convenient, not chosen. Not considered, convenient. My mother jumped in again. You're being dramatic, she said. This is why people say you're difficult. I almost smiled, because I realized something important. They were no longer defending the car. They were defending the narrative. Ashley equals deserving, me equals problem, even with documents proving otherwise. My father's voice hardened again. If you don't return it, we will report it. I replied calmly. Report what exactly? A pause, then, theft. I nodded slowly. That would be difficult. Confusion. What does that mean? I opened the registration file on my laptop and said softly, because it's legally mine. Silence. Longer this time. Then my mother laughed nervously. No, sweetheart, don't confuse paperwork. I interrupted gently. It's not confusion. Pause. I have the registration, the insurance, the loan authorization. All under my name. The line went dead silent. Then my father spoke slower now. You don't understand how families work. That sentence again. When legality appears, they switch to emotion. I said quietly, I understand how this family works very well. Silence. Then I continued, Ashley gets rewarded, I get liability. My mother snapped immediately. That's not true. My father cut in sharply. You've always been jealous of your sister. Jealous? The easiest explanation for imbalance. I responded calmly. I wasn't jealous. Pause. I was used. That word changed the tone instantly. My mother's voice softened suddenly. This is hurting us too, she said. You're acting like we don't love you. I asked simply. Then why didn't you tell me about the financing? Silence. Then she said, because you would have refused. I nodded slowly. So consent wasn't required? No answer. My father returned, frustration rising. You're twisting everything. I replied, no, I'm reading it. His tone turned colder. You've always been difficult, he said. Always overanalyzing instead of being grateful. Grateful? For what exactly? I asked. For being assigned debt without permission? Silence. Then anger. You think too much, he snapped. I answered softly, no. I finally started noticing. That line shifted something because it implied awareness, and awareness removes control. Her voice came suddenly in the background. Just bring the car back and stop ruining everything. I stayed calm. Ashley, do you know the loan is under my name? She hesitated. Then defensively, Dad handled it. Not denial, delegation, always upward. My father took the phone again. We didn't expect this reaction from you, ungrateful child, he said. I replied, that's because you expected silence. Pause, then I added, for years. That line went quiet. Even he didn't interrupt. My mother tried one last angle. You're the strong one, she said again. You don't need to make this a legal issue. I answered calmly. You made it a legal issue when you used my identity. Silence. Then my father's voice dropped. So what do you want? That was the first time they asked. Not demanded, not ordered, asked. I paused because this was the turning point, and I chose my words carefully. I want every financial record tied to my name disclosed. Silence. Longer, then, that's not necessary. I replied softly. Then you shouldn't be worried. No response. I closed my laptop and realized something important. They were no longer telling me what to do. They were trying to understand what I already knew, and that uncertainty was new for them. Uncomfortable, uncontrolled. My father's voice came again, lower now. You're still our daughter. Don't make this hard on yourself, I replied gently. Yes, pause, but I'm your daughter but not your financial buffer anymore. Silence. For the first time, there was no immediate response, just breathing on the other end. Then the call ended. And in that silence, the dynamic that had defined my entire life quietly collapsed. Not loudly, not dramatically, but permanently, because they still thought they were correcting a misunderstanding, while I had already begun building consequences they hadn't seen coming. The next call came at 7:18 a.m. My father again, but this time his voice wasn't just angry, it was disoriented, like something in his world had stopped making sense. What exactly are you trying to prove? He asked sharply. We are your parents. We have the right to manage family matters. I didn't answer immediately, because that sentence, "we have the right," was the entire problem finally spoken out loud. I replied calmly, "You don't have the right to use my identity without consent." A pause. Then my mother jumped in immediately, voice rising. "Consent! We raised you. Everything you have is because of this family." I stayed quiet. Let her continue. That was important. My father took the phone back. "You're acting like a stranger," he said, "like we did something criminal." I answered softly, "You did something unauthorized." Silence, then irritation again. "You're exaggerating paperwork," he snapped. "It's just a car." Just a car. That was their last comfort phrase. The unbelievable part begins. I opened my laptop, shared screen via email, and sent them a single file. Loan breakdown, bank authorization logs, signature timestamp audit, IP address trail. Then I said quietly, "It's not just a car." Pause. "It's my credit profile." Silence. Longer this time. Then my father's voice changed. Slower, careful. "You're serious?" My mother interrupted immediately. "That can't be right. We handled everything properly." I replied, "You handled it without me." There was a shift on the other end, not acceptance, confusion. My father repeated almost to himself, "How is this possible?" Then louder, "You always had access to our accounts anyway." That sentence revealed everything. I answered calmly, "I never authorized access to mine." Silence. Then my mother's voice sharpened again, defensive. "You're our daughter, we don't need permission." And there it was, the core belief, not misunderstanding, entitlement. I spoke slowly. "You needed permission." A pause, then I added, "But you assumed you didn't." Silence, longer than before. Then my father's tone changed again, this time confused, almost offended. "So what now?" he asked. "You're going to ruin your family over this." Ruin. As if accountability was destruction, I replied softly, "I'm correcting it." That word landed differently. My mother's voice rose again. "You're being ungrateful. We gave your sister a chance at stability." I responded. "And I was assigned her financial risk." Silence. Then my father, sharper, "You always interpret things negatively." I said quietly, "No, I document them accurately." That sentence didn't just answer. It redefined the conversation. My father suddenly laughed once. Short, uncomfortable. Then, "You really think you can challenge your own parents legally?" Pause. Then he added something he had never said before. "We are your parents. We can decide what's best." My reply was calm. "No." Silence. I continued, "You can decide for yourself, not for me." That's when the tone shifted fully. My mother's voice became emotional again. "You're destroying this family over pride." I answered, "No." Pause. "Over boundaries." My father's voice hardened again. "You don't understand consequences." I replied, "I do now." Silence. Then he said something that revealed the entire mindset. "We are not asking, we are telling you to fix this." I paused, then said quietly, "That doesn't work anymore." That line, simple, final. There was silence on the call, not anger. Not argument, just disbelief. Then my mother said slowly, "How are you doing this to us?" And that question was the breaking point for them, because in their minds they were still the authority, still the center, still entitled. I answered softly, "I didn't do anything to you." Pause. I removed myself from it. My father's voice dropped. "You're still our daughter." I replied, "Yes," then added, "but not your financial responsibility system." Silence. Then almost quietly, "You're being extreme." I answered, "No." Pause. "You're experiencing consequences." That word again, consequences, foreign to them. My mother tried one last time. "We can fix this at home," she said. "Just bring the car back and we'll forget this misunderstanding." I responded gently, "There is no misunderstanding." Silence. Then she whispered, "You're going to regret this." I paused and said calmly, "No." My father spoke one last time. "You think you've won something?" I replied, "No." Pause. "I've just stopped losing." That silence lasted longer than any argument before it. There was a silence on the call, but this time I didn't let it sit. I opened my laptop again. Slowly, deliberately, my father's voice came through one last time, tense now. "You think you can just create chaos and walk away from family responsibility?" I didn't answer him immediately. Instead, I clicked send. One email. To the bank fraud department, to the loan verification team, to the dealership compliance office, and to a legal contact I had already quietly consulted 2 days before, all attachments included, all timestamps preserved. Then I spoke calmly into the phone. You said you were managing family matters. Pause. I'm now involving official ones. There was a shift in breathing on the other side. My mother's voice came immediately, sharper now. What did you just do? I replied softly. I corrected unauthorized financial access. Silence. Then my father snapped. Are you insane? We are your parents. I leaned back in my chair. For the first time, I let my tone change, not louder, just final. You used my identity without consent, I said. You called it convenience. Pause. I'm calling it documentation. My phone immediately buzzed. Bank notification. Account flagged for review, external dispute initiated. Then another. Temporary freeze on linked loan authorization pending investigation. A long silence followed on the call. Not anger now. Confusion. My mother's voice dropped slightly. You froze it. I answered simply. I didn't freeze it. Pause. The system did. That line landed differently. Because for the first time, they weren't arguing with me anymore. They were dealing with processes they couldn't override with tone or authority. My father's voice turned tense again. You're escalating something you don't understand. I replied calmly. No. Pause. I'm aligning it with how it was structured. Silence. Then something I had never heard from him before, uncertainty. What do you want from us? He asked again, but slower now. I didn't hesitate this time. I want full removal of my financial identity from your decisions. Pause. And written acknowledgement that it was used without my consent. Silence. My mother immediately interjected. That will destroy trust in this family. I replied softly. No. Pause. You already did that. I opened another file, not emotional, not impulsive, prepared, and said quietly, there's something else you should know. Pause. I've already spoken to a legal advisor regarding identity-based financial authorization misuse. Silence. Then my father, sharper again. You wouldn't take this to outsiders. I answered. I already did. That was the moment everything changed, not because of anger, but because control had officially left their hands. My mother's voice cracked slightly. We can fix this privately. Don't make it public. I tilted my head. Interesting. Pause. You were fine making my finances public when it benefited someone else. Silence. Then Ashley jumped in the background, panicked. What does that mean? Am I involved in this? I replied calmly. You signed nothing. Pause. But your name was part of the narrative. That silence hit differently, because now even Ashley wasn't protected by ignorance anymore. My father's tone shifted again, less authority, more fear now. You're punishing your own family. I corrected him softly. No. Pause. I'm separating myself from what you chose to do. Long silence. Then he said something quieter. We didn't think you'd react like this. I almost smiled, because that was the truth they kept revealing. They didn't think I had reach. They didn't think I had documentation. They didn't think I had patience long enough to act. I closed my laptop slowly and said into the phone, This isn't revenge. Pause. This is correction. Then I added, You can explain the rest to the bank. And I ended the call. Within hours, loan dispute escalated to formal review. Dealer requested identity verification from all parties. Insurance linkage suspended pending legal confirmation. My name temporarily flagged as contested account holder. Not drama. Not chaos. Process. Systemic. Unavoidable. And for the first time, they couldn't say I was overreacting, because nothing I did was emotional anymore. It was procedural. That night I sat in silence, but it wasn't empty anymore. It was mine. No calls, no expectations, no assignments disguised as love, just space. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like someone's responsibility. I felt like someone who had finally removed herself from it. If your family said, We have the right to use your identity because you're family, would you still try to fix it quietly? Or would you do exactly what she did and let the system handle it? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. If you liked the story, subscribe because there are more stories coming in.